If you lead a church, you spend hours every week preparing sermons. And then you deliver the sermon, and your tech team spends hours producing it and improving it and doing all the technical things that go with putting a sermon online. But we've found that most churches don't spend anywhere near enough time in making sure their sermons are seen online. In today's episode, we're going to talk you through some of the tips and tricks we've learned to get more people to view your online sermons. We hope this conversation helps you reach more people and grow. This is the Reach Right Podcast. Well, hey guys, welcome to the Reach Right Podcast, episode number 73. I am your host, Thomas Costello, and with me, as always, is my co-host,
Ian Hyatt. What's up, Thomas?
Hey, Ian, not much, man. Excited to chat today. We're going to be talking about how to get more traffic on your church's online sermons. How to get more traffic on your church's online sermons. Here's the thing, is that we put so much time, and really a lot of the work of the church is put into things tied to sermons. So pastor probably puts in hours every week. Your tech team spends time getting ready for it and putting notes into the PowerPoint, and then they spend time putting it online, and they clip it up and they edit it and they do all the things you got to do. I mean, so much of church life happens, and it's been this way forever, is that, you know, it's all wrapped up around the preaching of the word, which we think is appropriate. That's a good thing. We think that we should invest a lot of time in preaching the word. That's something really important that all of us do. It's an important part of every church.
Yeah.
But I feel like that one place that churches tend to neglect is a lot of the little things that we can do to get more people to hear your sermons. And this is what this episode is all about today, is helping churches think through some of those little things that you can do. And there's not anything in here that's going to be earth-shattering, but I think there are lots of things that might increase your sermon views by 2% or 6% or 10% at best. But you add that all up, and you could get you could almost double your audience if you do all of this right. And I think we've come so far when it comes to sermons, is that just a few short years ago, or maybe a decade ago, a sermon was given once by most churches, and then it went off into the air. It was gone forever. It didn't have any recurring value. But now there is a sermon that you give once. It can be used for years, if not like decades and generations, to reach people with the gospel. So that's really what this all comes down to. I hope people hear our heart in this, is that our first and foremost, our biggest goal is that we would reach people with the good news of Jesus Christ. We want to equip churches to do exactly that. And I think these things are ways to reach more people with the gospel. That's why we do what we do. So that's why we're talking about it. Anything to add to that?
Yeah, I would just say, you know, this was important pre-pandemic. You know, as far as pastors, ministry leaders, churches wanted more traffic online for their sermons. They wanted people to watch and listen. The pandemic has accelerated that desire for a pastor to have more traffic online. It's made it even more important moving forward. So very relevant topic. So and I'll kick us off going right into the first one. First thing here that someone wants to do to get more traffic on their sermons online is consider the titles. And we're talking about we're talking about how you title your message online on your website, not how you title it at the church. You know, you can have a series going on Genesis or whatever, whatever it would be. And, you know, if you're preaching about Noah, you might be titling at the church for your message, "When it rains, it pours." Well, you don't want to title that, on your website or your online message, because people, when they're searching, they're going to not, be looking for "when it rains, it pours," or, they're not going to be searching for Noah or anything like that most of the time. So they're going to be doing something like "How to Grow Your Faith." That would be a better title. But these are important because of how people are searching online, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would say that it is possible that people do search for a title like Noah, like the name Noah.
Yeah, maybe Noah.
That would be search friendly. I think, you want to be careful with those, like "when it rains, it pours," that, like, to use your example. Yeah. I saw one recently. The name of the message was "Mountain, Get Out of My Way." and it was about Jesus saying, "Mountain be removed," or if you say, "Move this mountain, it will be removed." Like I think that like. If you think about it, if you're looking for sermons on Noah or you're looking for topics on growing your faith, you're going to type in something to that effect. Like if you're typing in "when it rains, it pours," you're probably looking for memes about people that are getting piled on or something, or you're looking for some kind of a weather update or something like that is what people are searching for with that. So you really have to think about this. And like this little change, this is probably, I think, the mistake I see most churches making is not really thinking about a search engine friendly title. And when you get this right, I think it'll make probably one of the biggest differences of everything we're talking about here today. So get your titles right. People will find you on search. You'll start to engage with more people that way. That's really important, I think.
Good.
Next one is always include notes. Always include notes. And so there's a few different kinds of notes we're going to talk about here. I'm going to hit this first one. This is just talking about the notes that you have to go with the sermon. So at a minimum, you want the scripture passages that you're teaching from. So you definitely want those in there. So if you're an expository teacher, that's how I typically teach is I'll maybe have 12 verses or something, and I'll have those right in the body of the text so people can read the verses we'll be reading in the message there. They can do it that way. You'll probably want to have maybe whatever your key points are. So if it's a 3-point outline, you'll want those key points. Maybe if you have some subpoints or a paragraph about each, that would be good things to have on there. And then you probably want some kind of call to action, your takeaways. I know at our church, one thing that we did was we would always have our small group questions because we had like sermon-based small groups. So we would put the small group questions right there in the body of the sermon, to kind of good takeaway questions for people to ponder after the service there. So these kinds of notes, just having that. Now it might seem like, okay, how does getting notes on there, how does that help our church? Like what does that do for us? Well, the answer is that search engines look at text content first. So when you have text content on there, assuming you're going to be using some of your keywords, because if you're preaching from a passage, it'll probably talk about your topic at some point in that passage. You're going to be putting it in your points. You're going to be putting it in your questions. Search engines will start to realize, okay, this is about growing your faith. And so when someone searches for growing your faith, this is something we should be showing them. So this is something important to help your search engine rankings, is getting content in there. I think this is one of those things that most churches also skip. I mean, I don't know. You can tell me, most of the people that you consult and talk to, how are their sermons set up? They don't usually have a lot of content there, right?
No, they don't.
Yeah. I mean,
usually it's just, there you can click to watch or listen, and maybe there's a couple of other things in there, like someone can share it on social media. But I don't see notes as often as I should. And I will say, some of the best church websites that I do see have these notes in them. And what I mean by that is, like, they're overall better websites when people take these extra steps too. But not enough do it for sure.
Just from a usability standpoint too, like if I'm a user and I have the scripture right there pasted into the notes on that sermon, it's nice. I can actually follow along with what you're reading right there. I can do it all in one place. I'm with everybody. I know that I wish people would open their Bibles, but I just think that it's optimistic to think that someone is going to hit pause on your video. So let me go grab my Bible really quick and make sure what he's saying is true, and then it's just like, yes, we would all prefer that, but in reality, that's not happening in most cases. So I'm a big proponent of putting all of those kinds of notes right in there. And again, I think it's going to help. It's going to make a better user experience, and I think it'll help big time on search.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, I mean, it's just, you're providing an extra resource for someone too. So that's also not just for SEO, but for that reason too. Well, good. I'll tackle the next one. It's include an image. Yeah, everyone's visual, right? And most people are definitely. The current generation, the next generation is, and people are more likely to just engage with a graphic or an image of some kind. And I still see, I would say most church websites that I come across have some sort of an image now, but there's still a lot of church websites that don't have that or even on social media too, just some sort of an image that's tied to the message. So This also helps for SEO. So we're kind of talking about two things, right? It's good to provide a visual. It's engaging to someone. They're more likely to click and watch if they see something, an engaging image that catches their eye. But search engines are looking for that too.
Yeah, so it's kind of a broad thing so search engines, what they're measuring in most cases is how many people that are presented with this link are clicking through to it. And if a lot of people click through to it, then they know, well, this is probably an important link. Let's continue to rank it higher and higher. And one of the ways that we get more people to click on a link is that we have an image that goes with it. And I don't know, it's so obvious to me that if you see a nice image that's drawn out about Noah, it's a picture of an ark in a storm or something like that, as opposed to just a title that says Noah growing your faith, almost everybody would be much more inclined to click on the image than they would on just the title there. So it helps with search engines. It gets more people on there organically. It's a huge win. Now, I guess if I were to take it up another notch, a pro level tip is that you want to also name your image appropriately. So if you want to get into the search engine stuff, I think having an image is one thing. The image should be something very similar to your title of your sermon there, because it's your key word, right? So if you have an image on there and the title of your sermon is Noah, growing your faith, your image title should be growing your faith, a series or a message about Noah, something like that. So you're using those same keywords, you're reinforcing it, and it's helping with search engine optimization. Images also have these things called alt tags, which is a little bit more technical, but you can get in there and edit those. You want to use keywords like faith and Noah and those kinds of things there too. So using an image and making sure it's tagged properly, it makes a big difference in how many people are going to see your message.
Good stuff. Good stuff.
Cool.
Why don't you get the next one?
Next one is a lot like my first one. So it's include notes, and this one is include, or at least consider including a transcript. So it's kind of notes to the next level is what a transcript is. So a transcript, of course, is getting a written copy of exactly what you say in your message there. So now some churches have this done already. If you're the kind of pastor or church leader that preaches you write out a transcript, even if it's not exactly what you say on Sunday, but it's 90% the same because you kind of want to get every word exactly right. If that's what you do already, you already have a transcript. So it's a no-brainer. Put that on there. If you're someone that is like me, you preach from an outline and you kind of have an understanding of your talk, but maybe not a word for word. You have a few word for words you want to really hit, but 95% of it is something that is more outline based. You'll probably have to look to get this done. And two options as I see it on how you can get it done. One, you can find a volunteer in your church that has a couple of hours and wants to be able to contribute. Maybe this is something that they're good at. They're a typist or they like to, they learn. Some people learn by kind of copying, right? So if they want to really get the sermon into them, they want to sign up to be part of the team that does transcripts of the sermons there. Alternatively, there are services that on average now, the prices on this have come way down because technology can usually really get 90% of the work done for you. But most of the services are going to cost around $1 a minute. You can find a service that gets a really high accuracy on your transcript. So if you're preaching 30-minute messages, it's $30 a week. Something like that is what you're looking at. And so
another reason to not be a long-winded preacher, right? Save some money on your trans. That's right. That's good.
Now, here's the thing, and maybe you can add to this a little bit. I'm not a transcript reader. I don't think I've ever read a transcript of a sermon before. Maybe I have of like a Spurgeon sermon because he famously would write out all of his sermons. So that's the only way we can hear it. But given my choice of video or audio or reading it, I would almost always do video. Or if I'm in a car, I'm going to be doing audio is going to be my choice.
Right.
But this is another big boon to your search engine optimization on this sermon. If you have an average message is going to be probably 4,000 or 5,000 words. That's a lot of really quality content that you can put onto there. It can make for something really valuable.
Yeah, that's good.
Cool.
I don't have anything else to add. I like this next one here because it's something that I almost never see on a church's website that should be there, is to link to related sermons. So within your sermons area or media area of your site, if you preached a message on prayer. I'm just making something up. Let's just say it was prayer.
Yep.
Well, if you have another message that you did a year ago that was prayer related, you should link to that. And again, we're talking almost like about on every one of these points, there's like two benefits, right? There's the SEO benefit to make it more visible. And there's also, again, providing another resource. If someone really is trying to grow their prayer life and your message encouraged them, but they want it even more, well, they're going to be able to link to another message. Like you said, for years now, most churches have an archive of sermons. Most churches that I run into, they have this already, and it's just one easy extra step that can add a lot of value to your sermons area on the site.
Yeah, again, this is another one of those double-edged swords. It's great for SEO purposes, but it's also just good for actual users. Like people want to see if they're actually engaged with your sermon, they want to learn more about the kinds of things that you're talking about. So there is no sermon that you can preach that you wouldn't think of something else you've preached about or talked about that you could link somebody off to. And this is something that we do. Like, so if you scroll down if you're on our site here watching this podcast or listening, you scroll down to the bottom of this here, you'll see related links or more. It'll say something probably like, we haven't put it in here yet because we don't know what the related links are going to be, but it'll say something to the effect on about more on online sermons or more about that. And you'll have a whole list of things. Now, we have a secret weapon with this is we talked a couple weeks ago about WordPress and some of the plugins that we think churches should be using. One of those was a search engine optimization plugin called Yoast. Definitely use that if you're on WordPress, but it does something amazing. It actually takes a look at your entire site, and then it compares whatever the content you put into this sermon would be, or in this case, in this podcast, it'll compare our podcast content to everything else on our site. And it'll say, here are the 5 things that you've done on your site that are most like this piece of content right here. So it's kind of an automatic related links that it puts in. It makes all kinds of great suggestions like that. But you should make it your goal that every time you preach a sermon, have a number like 5 different sermons or 5 different pieces of content on your site that you link off to. It'll just kind of help to build this web for search engine purposes, but also just for user experience purposes. I think it really will go a long way for people.
Yeah, and I'm glad you mentioned that because I think with a lot of this, with what we've covered so far with each one of these items, I think a lot of people could be thinking, this is a lot of work. Gosh. Yeah. And we don't have the manpower. I'm glad you mentioned there's a lot of tools, specifically with WordPress, which is, of course, we're fans of and we use. But there are tools out there to make this a lot easier than probably a lot of people are thinking. So that's good.
Yeah, definitely. I think, again, this isn't a plug. We don't get any kind of commission or anything from Yoast, unfortunately, because we turn a lot of people onto it. But we absolutely love it. It is a great tool that you could be using, and it makes your life a piece of cake. Because I think I'd struggle too. I mean, we've done 72 episodes of this podcast now. We have something like 300 blog posts on our site, or 400. I think we just broke. It's a huge number of. So I can't list off every single blog post that we've done and tell you what episode 31 of the podcast was about. We don't remember all that stuff. I would remember if I looked at it and refreshed myself, but the software does. They know what's going on your site. And so that's a hard ask, because I don't expect any pastor out there remembered what they preached back in 2013. But if you have it on your site, you have some notes in there. Yeah, there are definitely tools that'll help you organize that and get it out there. And it's just kind of a snowball effect. It'll help to improve things. Yep.
Yeah, this is a good transition to the next one you got.
Yeah, it's good. So the next one is use tags and categories. Yeah. So I'll try and give a little bit of an explanation on what this is. This is WordPress specific terminology, but every single platform out there that's worth its salt has a similar kind of system, and they probably still call it tags. I mean, most people are familiar with tags, or at least hashtags, those kinds of things. It's the same thing. But what it does is it helps you to put a few labels on every single sermon that you preach. So you're probably going to label it with things like the sermon series that it's a part of, a tag or a category for that, the speaker that gave the message. You're going to probably include the scripture or the book of the Bible that it's from, and then any kind of topic that it's a part of maybe. So we've been talking about growing your faith with Noah. So you'd probably put things like Genesis, Thomas Costello as the preacher, a series on Noah and about faith, whatever it would be. So you'd put all those things on there as tags and categories. And what it does is it kind of builds this searchable database on your site so that over 3 or 4 years, you're going to have preached 7 or 8 sermons on faith. And you'll probably have talked about Noah 2 or 3 times. And the preacher who's preaching has probably done, if you're doing the lion's share, you've done 400 messages or something in that time. But if you're a guest speaker, you've done 7, and they can find all your other ones that way. And the topics are there. So it helps people to then locate these other topics or these other things that are similar content in the future there. And again, it's another play towards search engine optimization. It gets more people looking at your site, looking at other sermons, and it gets more people finding you on Google. So that's what that comes down to.
Really good explanation. I'll get the next one, which is post your sermons to multiple channels. You would think this should be a no-brainer, and I see a lot of churches doing this, which is great, but it should be a no-brainer to get the message not just on your website, get it on Facebook, get it on YouTube, Vimeo, that we can name a ton. And a lot of churches are, I think most churches that I come across now, at least over 50% are using YouTube and Facebook for sure. So you definitely want to get those out there. Not everyone's going to end up on your website. Most people do before they go to a church for the first time, and they'll get on there. But for people following you already on social media, YouTube or whatever, you're going to get other people there, and you're going to get the word out there on other channels whenever you do as many as you can.
Yep. So we do, we weekly, we're uploading a 30-minute video or audio file, depending on how you folks are following this podcast here. But honestly, you do so much work. It's one of those things where you work so hard at writing the message, you deliver the message, you record the message, you edit the message. That is like 95% of the work. Yeah. All these things we're talking about today are pretty simple, but this one is so simple just to do. If you're loading it onto YouTube, it doesn't take that much more time to upload it onto Facebook too. Even with slow internet, you're using a lot of the same content. You're posting the same kind of video file. So it really is a no-brainer to put it there, to put it on Vimeo, to put it really on every channel that will receive it. If you are, put your clips onto Instagram, put a clip onto Twitter, put it everywhere that you can possibly put this content, and it will actually pay dividends for you. Again, this is not a double your audience. I mean, this one actually could be close. I mean, if you are not putting your messages on Facebook and you have a good Facebook following, you're only putting it on YouTube. I mean, you could very easily see a 20, 30, 40% increase, I would say, by putting it onto Facebook. Now, I'm going to go ahead and hit the last one because it ties into this here, is the final thing today is that when you post it on multiple channels, always link back to your website as the primary place that people watch it. So given your choice, you should always want people to engage with your content on your website instead of on YouTube or on Facebook or on Vimeo or on any other channel out there. The reason for that is there's multiple, but the biggest is that you have the most control over your audience when they are on your site. So you can suggest the other links. On Facebook, they have ads on the side. They have other things competing for their attention further down. On YouTube, there's a list of 12 other videos they could be watching instead of this one. On your site, you have only your content and then maybe some links to other things that are your content and other related issues and scripture and the stuff you want to engage people with. So it's so important that you don't make the mistake of just putting your content on Facebook. Always have a link in that post that goes back to the website so people can engage with them. They can engage with it there. And it really will make a huge difference. What do you have to add?
And I tell churches this day in and day out, because I do website evaluations and I'm looking at their social media and looking over their sites. And I tell them this too, that yes, the reason why you want to always pull in, like if it's live streaming or even on-demand messages to your website and having people come back from social media to the site is because even if they watched a message on Facebook, they can't do things there like filling out a connection card or give or make, because a lot of times after someone watches a message, they may want to get in touch with you and have questions about baptism, salvation, whatever it is, becoming a member at your church, or they may want to give, which we don't want to make that hard for people to do.
No,
Let's face it, in a church, no pastor does. But at the same time, they can do more. Like you said, there's other content that's going to be on the website. They're a captive audience. You have control, but they can do more from the site. Again, all for social media. Be there. That's why we said go to multiple channels, but they can do more with your sermon on your website. Yeah.
And again, just back to this is one of the key factors in search engine ranking is how much time people stay on a post. So if they are watching your sermon and they're staying on there, or they're clicking on to other sermons and staying on your site, this is every second they stay on your site, it's being recorded, and Google knows, and they're aware of how much content people are consuming there, and they'll start to rank you higher and higher if you do these kinds of things right. So again, the thing to take away from all this is we didn't give anybody a way to to 10x your sermon views or anything like that. I think you do all this stuff right, and you will see a 10x not next week, but you will see it in 3 years if you do these kinds of things consistently. 150 sermons in a row, you keep doing this kind of stuff, you will see an enormous increase in this. Take it from us. We started a podcast with a very small podcast audience, and we see more and more, and we're in that snowball kind of a season with this here. So it's doing the little things right. And I can't express this enough, just what a difference that makes. If you're the average church in the country, you're preaching to 100 people every single week, well, what kind of an impact is it going to make if you are putting these online and you're starting to do these things right, and you start to see 50 people watching online, and that becomes 100, it becomes 200, it becomes 500. I would think that most churches that do this right will have a larger online audience than they would have an in-person audience. And do with that what you will. I mean, maybe that's something that hurts your heart a little bit. I know that scares me a little bit. I think that assembling together is very important. We believe in that, you and I both. But there is still value in people that are watching what you're talking about and hearing the gospel online. I think that's why this is so important. So get the little things right. Anything to add as we close, Ian?
No, I think that's good. I think that all of these things, like I just, like we said earlier, I think they're not as hard as probably someone thinks to pull off. And we're here to give tips on that if anyone wants help with it. So
drop us a comment below wherever you're watching it. If this has been helpful to you, in addition to a comment below, you can rate, review, subscribe, leave us a review on iTunes, on Google Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you're listening or watching this. We love your feedback and comments on there. So thank you guys so much for being a part of our Reach Right family, and we hope to catch you next week.
See ya.